Can you feel it? I mean, really, can you feel it? Like, look around at this dystopian hellscape that we're in. You know that sinking feeling that you feel when you wake up and you realize you're an adult, Superman can't fly, and heroes don't exist. That's where we're living in right now. I'm sure you've heard the news. Janet Jackson had an interview on The Guardian, and in this interview, she opened her mouth to say, Kamala Harris's dad isn't black. Kamala's not black. I mean, it seems like ever since the Tangerine Tornado blew his fat ass down that golden escalator, every time a celebrity that you love, that you respect, opens their mouth, instead of excitement to hear what they have to say, what the next announcement is, we have to squint and brace ourselves because we don't know if they're going to say something so stupid and disappointing you can't even be a fan anymore. Am I right? We already lost Kanye. He's gone. Lil Wayne, we almost lost Snoop Dogg. I'm still unwavering on him. The little girls can't even look up to strippers anymore, guys. Amber Rose, gone. You saw her at the RNC. The only ex-stripper we have left to fantasize about and still feel wholesome inside is Cardi B. Lord, please let Cardi B stay on the right track. I mean, at least when Amber Rose was a stripper, we could respect her. Am I right? So here's the thing. The reporting that you've heard, just like me, about what Janet Jackson said, has just been the one sentence. And I know you're expecting me to flame Young Penny from Good Times, because that's what I do. And I will flame Young Penny from Good Times. You thought I wasn't going to. Wrong. But Whoopi Goldberg tells us yesterday on The View that she deserves some grace. We all messed up and we should give her some grace. So I did my due diligence. I read the entire 2-page article, and YouTube, there is so much more that you didn't hear. There's so much more that we need to talk about. I want to let Whoopi tell us about grace. I want you to see what she's talking about, because there's an education coming on this one. It's not just a flaming. I will flame her. You're ready for it, but there's more. There's an education on this one. Watch this first. I'll see you on the other side.
And so it's unfortunate that Janet Jackson, an icon, admittedly said, I don't know, I haven't been reading the news these past few days. So I don't know if it comes from misinformation. I don't know if it comes from a lack of information. But all I know is that I don't want to give it this much air.
Well, unfortunately, no, well, hold on. Yeah, she's got a phone. Janet Jackson is not a political animal.
Yeah.
She does. Right. She's a musician. Her life is doing this, and she's mourning her brother. Mm-hmm. So
that's right. Tito just died.
I am. You know, I sometimes have said stuff, and you know, I was wrong. But people want you to say something right away, you know. But when people are coming at you, saying, "Hey, you're not paying, you're dumb, you don't know," you know, you don't want to answer people, especially if
and you're afraid you'll get it wrong in answer.
And it is a pain in the butt, I have to tell you. So sometimes people get it wrong, and they're wrong. They made a mistake. They were wrong. It happens. Anybody who says it doesn't happen to every one of us, multiracial or not, we all do it. So, okay, a little grace for the girl.
Grace. Maybe if everything that Whoopi just said was true, grace could be afforded, YouTube. Unfortunately, none of it is. There's a difference between grace and excuses for bad behavior. There's a difference between uninformed, misinformed, and willful ignorance. And before you get on The View to speak, you too should have read the 2 pages. You should have read it first. Allow me to help you out, YouTube. Number 1, she says she's mourning. No, she wasn't. Right here in the article, it says We were speaking a few weeks before the sudden death of her brother Tito. That wasn't why she was confused, discombobulated. That happened afterwards. She was in her right mind. Another excuse Whoopi makes is, well, she's not a political animal. She just makes music and that's her thing. She doesn't really know anything about this stuff. Well, besides the fact that in the article she says, well, I haven't read the news in about 3 days, meaning that she's reading up. What she's reading, we'll talk about in a second. But more importantly than that, we're reminded that Janet Jackson brought politics directly to the pop consciousness with Rhythm Nation, which addressed racism, poverty, and inequality. Remember that? She was a political animal. It was all in her music. She wasn't just a musician. She was a musician who had something to say. That excuse doesn't fly. Also, Whoopi Goldberg. It says in the 2-page article that I read, that you could have read before you got on, she is a prolific social media user and has used her profile to support Black Lives Matter, to bring awareness to police brutality. She's not only political, she's an activist. Even if just online. Things that make you go, how could someone like this even say what she said? And we're about to get to that. Here's the education. I just want to make sure the excuses are out of the way. Now, this isn't new for Whoopi. She's the type to always back her celebrity friends. And maybe that's admirable. I don't know. But she backed Bill Cosby up until there was no chance to back him anymore. She backed Dan Johnson? I don't know, the guy who she had a relationship with, the dude from Cheers, when he wore blackface. She has consistently backed the celebrity, backed her friends, asked for this grace. Unfortunately, this is willful ignorance. This is not just misinformed or uninformed because you had the chance to read it yourself. But more importantly, the climate that we're in today means that misinformation can be dangerous. So no, we will not let the misinformation fly and give grace. So now that that's out of the way, YouTube, I got mind-blowing information for you. We have a timeline, an exact timeline that gives us a understanding of why someone who's posting about Black Lives Matter, who's standing for decency and righteousness, somehow comes across the type of news that tells you that not only Kamala Harris isn't black, but her father is white. Because per your story, your backstory, and the information in your own interview, you, Janet Jackson, should know better, should think twice. That should never have come out your mouth. We're going to talk about the psychology of a fallen hero. YouTube, you should find it rich that Janet Jackson, of all people, would be talking about the identity of somebody, where they look, how they don't look, who their father is. Let's go to the article. Jackson spent much of the first half of her career openly berating herself in interviews, believing she wasn't good enough, for thinking she was too fat. It says before that she had boyfriends who used to direct the way that she looked. They used to take control of her identity, and how long it took for her to get out of such a thing. For the person who also had a brother who was accused of wanting to be white as he bleached his skin because he had a disease. As well as a person who has this beautiful human being for a child. You of all people should be the last person talking about who's race, who's mixed, who's white, and who's black. This is you, isn't it? What you did there was disgusting, and the worst part about it is this is coming from out of nowhere. YouTube, we have to remember that we just saw in the same article that she was all over social media, prolific with the Black Lives Matter content. She was for racial justice and injustice anywhere. She was woke. How does someone like that, seeing the way she grew up, the life she had to come from, and the one she's living now, where these questions will undoubtedly arise for her own son? How did she get here? And that's where the article goes off the deep end, but nobody noticed it, YouTube. I got you. Check this out. In the same vein of conversation about Black Lives Matter, about bringing awareness to police brutality, the interview asked Janet Jackson how does she feel about the slow change in society, and even says, is she hopeful about the future? And Janet Jackson's answer is, well, there's all this child trafficking crap that's going on and sex trafficking crap, you know what I mean, that wasn't so prevalent back then. Excuse me? That's a curious answer. Child trafficking, sex trafficking, that's the first thing you go to when she's talking about Black Lives Matter, police brutality, societal change? I think it's really now out in the open because it's $1 billion business and all that crap. YouTube, here's some psychology. Janet Jackson was a survivor of an abusive father. She smoothed it under the rug and got back together with him for the sake of family, said he was a good man. Janet Jackson was also the sister of someone who was accused of messing with kids. My first assumption was, where has she been going to get her news? Think about it, guys. Who do you know speaks like this? We're talking about QAnon rabbit holes. I'm talking about an algorithm that's feeding you something. How did you get to that algorithm? And YouTube, I wasn't the only one. Immediately, this interviewer says the same thing. I wonder what internet rabbit hole she has been going down. Because I remind you, YouTube, when Whoopi Goldberg tells you that she made a mistake and she was wrong, that is without context. The only way that you know about the race of Kamala Harris is because Trump, at a black meeting for black journalists, said that she's not black. That's how that came up. There's never been a question about her race. You know that. It's not that you don't know the news. Listen to her exact answer to this question. The interviewer says, after all, I say, America could be on the verge of voting in its first black female president, Kamala Harris. And Janet says, well, you know what they supposedly say? She asked me, she's not black. That's what I heard, that she's Indian. Oh, you did you? Where did you hear that? Let's continue. She looks at me expectantly, perhaps assuming that I have Indian heritage. Well, she's both, I offer. Janet responds, her father's white. That's what I was told. I mean, I haven't watched the news in a few days, she coughs. I was told that they discovered her father was white. Number one, the only way you know that is because she says that she's black. Whatever you're watching, whatever you saw that told you that, that was your choice to believe. That's what they told me. What did Kamala say? This wasn't just something that came across your phone one day. Hey, by the way, Kamala's dad is white. Nothing else there to see. No. There's a reason why you listen to the person who said that. But YouTube, there's something even more telling. You're in the room with a reporter from The Guardian who just told you that she's black. And you, the person who hasn't read the news in 3 days, discounts the reporter telling you the news because you know that her father is white, because you chose to believe that, because that was your decision at that moment. It wasn't, oh, I just didn't know. It was, Yeah, Miss Reporter from The Guardian, but I heard this. Where? Maybe from your QAnon people. You went down a rabbit hole because you've had this dealing with sexual abuse. This is what happened, YouTube. This is how they got her. For someone like her, who already has issues with her own body and herself, with abuse, who's seen her sister, as you can see right here in the article, deal with sexual abuse, sexual assault. When she heard child trafficking, she honed in. And after 2020, or whenever it was that she was on the woke side, they got her with this. She believed it. And she went down this rabbit hole, and now the algorithm is only giving her crap. And it all started with her believing that she was just being decent. Did you see how much more child trafficking is happening? That's how it starts. That's the education. Janet Jackson has been brainwashed in 4 years. We've got to say at least since 2020, or 4 years or less, through a QAnon adjacent or similar tactic. Someone who was caring about kids, someone who knew that this thing goes on. They sucked her in, and the algorithm has been feeding her nothing but Kamala has a white father. You know who says that? This person says that.
Before we fully jump in, let's just go to Laura Loomer, who of course is like hook, line, and sinker all in. She's not black, and actually pulled up Kamala Harris's birth certificate, because again, we're back here, and highlights, yeah, Donald Berkeley, not black. She says, she said this is proof that he's not black because he's Jamaican. She says, see Kamala Harris's birth certificate below, which I have obtained. Nowhere in her birth certificate does it say she's black or African. Kamala is a liar. Donald Trump is correct. Kamala Harris is not black and never has been.
What are you doing listening to Laura Loomer? What are you doing listening to these people? And why is it that when you heard that, you believed that over the Guardian newspaper who was telling you different? Because now you're sucked in. And if you don't believe it, then that means everything that you may have been believing for the past 4 years could also be a lie. No. You got it wrong. I was told that he's white. Why do you believe that when I'm telling you, the Guardian person, that he's black? I believe that because if that's wrong, then everything that I've been sucked into for 4 years could be wrong. It's your fault, Janet Jackson. But you come out here and you willfully become ignorant while the person in front of you is telling you something. If you don't look up multiple verifications for everything, including what you see here, you too could be susceptible. Media literacy, that's the education. Yeah. Unfortunately, although I understand how it happened, the detriment is still the same. By Janet Jackson repeating these lies, these racist, ridiculous lies. However she got there, she has now become a danger by spreading misinformation. Misinformation started by someone who wants to be a dictator, by someone who wants to overthrow democracy at all costs and uses these lies and these wedges as a way to distort truth and separate decent people, separate the voting base, and maybe even steal an election. It's dangerous. No, I will not give you grace. I will come on here and tell the truth. I will say how you got there, and I will also say, stop it, be better. And I will try my hardest to let everyone else out there know that we don't accept it because the danger is too real. Excuses, excuses, excuses.